Thank you for the kind introduction, Peter, and welcome to what will hopefully be the crescendo of today's program. I'll be presenting a nickel sulphide discovery story, but an unusual one because we haven't quite made the discovery yet, but it's very close. We've got 100,000 tonnes of nickel in resource already at our SHERLOCK Bay nickel sulphide project, and that's a view across the project there. So what a great place to explore and potentially mine in the future. The growing part of it is, though, what we're actually focused on. So here's the location of our key projects. SHERLOCK Bay being the prime focus, located in the northwest Pilbara of WA. We also have the NEPEAN South nickel sulphide project, which is a komatiite-hosted exploration property. The Nyngan gold with nickel copper potential as well to the west of NEPEAN South, and then some uranium vanadium in the Northern Territory. But our primary focus here is nickel sulphide discovery and hopefully development, with the key focus being the SHERLOCK Bay nickel project. So where is SHERLOCK Bay? As I mentioned, it's in the northwest Pilbara, and it's spatially associated with a major crustal suture, the Shoal Shear. Now, we've already got over 100,000 tonnes of nickel in resource, and that spatial association with the Shoal Shear has been a bit of a handicap for us in the sense that SHERLOCK Bay was drilled out initially in the 1970s and then the early 2000s. It's always been considered a bit of an orphan, an unusual deposit hosted by felsic volcanics and sedimentary rocks that has often been regarded as a remobilised shear zone hosted deposit. But we think the spatial association with the SHERLOCK intrusive is critically important. And one of the things that supports that importance is the discovery of the Andover nickel deposits by Azure Minerals, 60 kilometres to the west, which you heard about earlier from Tony Rivera. Now, they've got massive sulphides essentially in the same intrusion as the SHERLOCK intrusive, and we feel that there is potential for massive sulphides within the SHERLOCK Bay environment as well. And that's what we're currently drilling. So what is SHERLOCK Bay? It's a resource within a 1.5 kilometre corridor made up of the Discovery and the Simmons deposits, both nice, thick, steeply dipping bodies of disseminated to sort of matrix sulphide. And the resource currently stands at around 24.6 million tonnes at 0.4% nickel in sulphide, or about nearly 0.5% nickel equivalent with the copper and the cobalt thrown in. So it looks like an intrusive related deposit with those sort of nickel copper cobalt ratios. So as I said, we've got nearly 100,000 tonnes of nickel metal in that resource, or 115,000 tonnes nickel equivalent. So a good start. Now, we've conducted a pretty detailed scoping study on that deposit earlier this year. That's a longitudinal projection of the initial mine planning, 2 open pits and 2 declines. At that grade, it actually does go pretty well on an operating cost basis because of the geometry and the thickness of those sulphide bodies. And that project produces around 70,000 tonnes of nickel in mixed hydroxide using heap leach over a 10-year mine life. And that generates pretty strong operating cash flows at an operating cost of about $6 a pound. At the current nickel price of around $10, it spits out about 500 million Aussie over that 10-year period of operating cash flow. After CapEx, which is 280 million up front, and then about 100 million of sustaining capital and mining capital, it still makes a little bit of money. So it washes at face, but to really make it fly, we want either a sustained higher nickel price, which is obviously projected, but we really think that discovery of higher grade nickel sulphides is the best thing that we can do to make this thing really fly. The good news is we've identified potential for massive sulphides in the mine environment, in the resource environment. That's a longitudinal projection developed using fairly sophisticated techniques, which included a light table and a bag of coloured pencils. So no leapfrog involved in this one. And you can see the grade of the nickel sulphide resource is generally increasing with depth. But the real key to the discovery model here is the recognition that SHERLOCK Bay is an intrusive related deposit. The mineralised horizon is actually just a sedimentary horizon. It's not really a shear zone at all. And our model is that the SHERLOCK intrusion has essentially invaded that structure and introduced magmatic fluids to that iron-rich horizon and deposited the sulphide, which forms the resource that we know of. To back up this model, we've conducted a detailed gravity survey along the shoal shear with our mining lease, and we've identified a very strong linear gravity high that we think is associated with the SHERLOCK intrusion. And that's projected to basically interact with the mineralised horizon along that green line. So what we're targeting here is the point at which the SHERLOCK intrusion interacts with that mineralised horizon, and right on that contact zone is where we project the massive sulphides to occur. Essentially, it's the Nova-Bollinger model. Nova-Bollinger started off as a fairly low-grade disseminated sulphides in the host rocks. The sulphide discovery was made at that point where the intrusion, at the base of the intrusion, where it interacts with that country rock. So we've planned 4 diamond drill holes. This has been supported by the WA government through the EIS co-funding scheme, which we see as a strong endorsement of the program. And we've now drilled the first 2 holes of that program at the southern end, or the western end, sorry, of that longitudinal. So I'll now go to the section through that zone. And this program's supported by downhole EM to really pin down the location of these massive sulphide targets. So this is the live section, essentially. The first hole, hole number SBD1, just down in here, went below some of the previous, one of the previous intersections that intersected about 50 metres at about 0.4 equivalent, and intersected another 50-metre zone of sulphide, but it did include some semi-massive sulphide lenses and up to 5 to 10% sulphide overall. We then carried out downhole EM, and to our great pleasure, we were able to detect multiple, both in-hole and off-hole conductors. Now, the in-hole conductor was weak to moderate, and it's associated with the sulphides that we actually intersected, and nothing else in that hole has produced an EM anomaly. So we know that the EM anomaly that's in-hole is associated with sulphides. Very importantly, we located 2 strong off-hole conductors. The first one is just located above the hole, sitting on the hanging wall of the mineralised horizon, which is this brown unit. That's probably a small massive sulphide lens just sitting between those holes. But very importantly, we also detected this major off-hole conductor sitting to the east of this section and just below on the footwall side of the mineralised horizon, projected to occur on the contact with the intrusive. And we actually intersected the SHERLOCK intrusive for the first time at Sherlock Bay at the end of that hole. We'd already started the second hole from south to north when we were doing the downhole EM. And that hole was coming from south to north, really targeting to go through the hanging wall of the SHERLOCK intrusive and into the mineralised horizon, pretty well at the base of the intrusive. And that's exactly what we hit. We hit the SHERLOCK intrusive, which includes gabbro and sort of differentiated, what was described as diorite, but it looks more like granophyric zones. And we actually intersected sulphide very close to the southern contact, a 2.4 metre zone with pyrrhotite, chalcopyrite and nickel sulphides. We then passed through the intrusion, a bit of disseminated sulphide at the base, so it looks like it's definitely sulphur saturated, then into a zone, a 15-metre zone of strong sulphide development, including massive sulphide lenses and some matrix sulphide right within the base of the SHERLOCK intrusive. This is essentially the Nova position. Now, the conductor was modelled to be just located to the east of this section, and when we did downhole EM in this second hole, we located in exactly the same position, but in addition to that, it looks like this 15-metre sulphide zone is essentially the big toe. And now we're targeting the centre of the thing, 40 metres to the east of that section. That hole's about halfway to the target at around 140 metres as we speak. So watch this space. On a slightly more regional scale, this is the gravity image I was talking about earlier. There, the Discovery and Simmons resources, And you can see this gravity high. That's where we're drilling at the moment, and we've intersected the intrusive at exactly that position, sitting just to the east in the footwall of the mineralised horizon, which actually dips to the north. And that intrusive contact continues all the way through the plus 5 kilometre strike length of our Sherlock Bay mining lease. There has been some previous EM done on this property, and it's picked up relatively low level EM anomalies, both associated with Sherlock Bay itself, which is mainly a disseminated deposit, but also along strike. But it wasn't very deep penetrating, and we think the contact zone is around that 300 metre below surface level. So we're now going to conduct a deeper penetrating EM survey to really look at that entire 5 kilometre strike length of the project. So it's a dual focus on what we think we're going to hit in about 2 weeks, which is massive sulphides below the Sherlock Bay resource, and then also looking to develop other massive sulphide targets, because this was never looked at as a massive sulphide Sherlock intrusive related deposit in the past. And this is the first drilling that's been done since about 2005. Obviously, success and resource upgrades will be critically important to the economics of this project. And we'll then move to upgrade from scoping study that indicates we've almost got an economic project already to something that could really fly. And with potential to grow, because I've got no doubt there'll be multiple massive sulphide lenses within this corridor. Our other nickel project in WA is NEPEAN South, located, as the name suggests, about 15 kilometres along strike from the NEPEAN nickel mine, which produced over 1 million tonnes at 3% from massive sulphides probably about 40 years ago or so. It was the next nickel sulphide found after Kambalda. We've got a 10 to 12 kilometre strike length of magnetic features within our tenement, NEPEAN South. Previous RAB drilling by Mincor had located up to 6 metres at 1.84% in the saprolite, or in the lateritic horizon above these interpreted to be ultramafic bodies. We've since done detailed drone magnetics, which has defined a series of beautiful looking channelized style ultramafics. But the previous work that was done was very shallow, and on the basis of the low MGO values, the previous company walked away from this project. We've now done deeper RC drilling into the fresh rock, and we've ticked a couple of key boxes. One, we've found sulphides in the ultramafic, and quite a lot of sulphide in the sort of footwall mafics as well, up to 0.2% nickel, but it's associated with very high MGO rocks, up 28% MGO, right in the Kambalda plot. So this is a critical breakthrough of this project. We know there's sulphides around, we know we've got the right ultramafics, we know we've got the footwall, the channelized ultramafics and the potential footwall embayments. So next step is going to be electromagnetics along those key channelized corridors, and then drilling to test for massive sulphides. And a pretty good chance of success given our proximity to NEPEAN just up the road. We've also got some uranium vanadium projects in the Northern Territory, so continuing the energy metals theme. We're targeting sandstone-hosted roll front deposits there. So Sabre Resources, why invest? We've got a major nickel sulphide project at Sherlock Bay with existing 115,000 tonnes of nickel metal equivalent in resource, and immediate, and I mean within days, upside for a high-grade massive sulphide discovery. We've got a clear focus on advancing these nickel sulphide and energy metals projects in great places to explore and develop in the northwest of WA and in the Northern Territory. We've got a very lean management team with a track record of discovery and demonstrating value through resource growth and advancing development studies. We've got a fair bit of cash, 8 million as of 30th of June, and we're great value. We're only about 17 million market cap. Very hard to cram 100,000 tonnes of nickel and a massive sulphide discovery into a 17 million market cap, I think. Right place, we think we're doing things at the right time. We've definitely got the right commodities, and I think we've got the right strategy focusing on nickel sulphide discovery to really upgrade our portfolio and send this company to the stratosphere. There's your disclaimer. Thank you very much.